The technology changes, the individual technologies change, but the basics, I think, are still the same in terms of, who knew that 10 years ago that Twitter was going to be a tool that we use? I mean, so from Twitter to like the editing programs and cameras, all of it is basically the same. And I think that you can learn a lot of that stuff on the job. I think what really doesn't fundamentally change is the journalism part of it, the fundamentals, the chasing down your facts, being able to know what you know. That's one thing I tell people. Yeah, I ask people, or someone will say, well, this happened, or this is a circumstance of the story, and you say, well, how do you know that? Did you hear it on Twitter? Did you read it somewhere? There's so much information floating around that really you have to focus on those fundamentals and accuracy, and try and stick to that. What has changed for us is the number of people that we have to do television. We had originally here in Perth 7 people on our team, and we've started to scale back. So now it's just 2 of us doing everything. So we're doing the reporting, we are shooting our own video, we are shooting our own interviews, we are transmitting all of that material back to New York. So in some ways, we're doing more jobs at once than we used to. Yeah, and some people lament that and say, well, that's such a terrible turn the industry has taken, that now they're not able to pay for all of these people to do all of these jobs. And on the other side, I argue that it's actually can be very liberating as a journalist to not be tied to all of those things, like a satellite truck, waiting for a crew with all of their gear to show up. If there's news to go cover, you go do it, and you can seize the opportunity to go. So yeah, it has changed. We don't have as many resources, but that's not going to reverse itself, I don't think. So you either lament it and wish for the good old days, or you figure out how to work within that model and make it work for you. And I think for me, that's meant we are more mobile. We can respond faster, and I think that can give us ultimately a competitive edge.
One of our key roles is to filter through all that massive information that's out there, and try and communicate to the viewers what we know to be true, what we know to be untrue. And I think that's sort of the value of journalism in this sort of information age. I mean, there's a lot of talk, isn't there, about how journalism's changed and about how it's different now to how it used to be. But in fact, those basic skills have remained the same. And the world has remained the same in the sense that there's a lot of information out there and you have to cut through it and you have to find it. We're at the sort of cutting edge of finding information. And that's, in my experience, always been the case.
You're so optimistic about the future of journalism. Why?
Well, I'm optimistic about the future of journalism because there is such a remarkable amount of experimentation going on. It's just a matter of looking in some of the unusual places. So there's a phrase that I ran into, and I think it characterizes what we're seeing, which is the notion of hospicing the old and midwiving the new. So the profession of journalism as we've known it, there's no question that it is in a state of, for lack of a better word, a state of falling apart. And yet, in the process of doing that, the conversations are going on about the deeper values of journalism, its purposes, and in those conversations, what I think people are beginning to notice is what is it that needs to be conserved? And what I hear over and over again with the journalists that I work with is it is the values and principles of transparency, accountability, openness, the things that make journalism still have life to them. And what's changing are the forms and the myriad of experiments that are teaching us more about everything from crowdsourcing investigative journalism to journalism as a conversation and what it means when stories are told both through the eyes of the public as well as professional journalists, are beginning to teach us an awful lot about what journalism looks like in a new age.